And a good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming out here, and welcome to another episode of Top 5 Streams. And tonight we'll be basically listing our favorite villains from the Game of Thrones television series, okay? And joining me as usual is Dawg from Dawg Show. So what's happening, Dawg?
Not a whole lot tonight, Milt. Just looking forward to getting into this conversation with you. Some of my favorite characters are villains in Game of Thrones. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to doing these every Sunday with you. So next week we'll be on my channel doing another one. So, and great to see the folks arriving in the chat as well tonight. So, but again, yeah, I think that's what makes this show, one of the greatest, that's ever been on television is some of our villains. So it's going to be great to talk about them tonight.
So any tough choices?
Yeah, I did actually. When I got, I think I was pretty rock solid on my top three.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I got into 4 and 5 and who was going to make that honorable mention list, there was a couple of them on there that I was kind of fighting over, who was going to make that spot tonight. So how was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really that bad because when we did that, our top favorite Game of Thrones characters, 4 out of the 5 of them are villains. So, it was easy for me just to kind of recycle a couple of those slides. So it wasn't that bad, but I think I had to reslot a couple of these guys. No, I mean they may have been great characters, but in terms of villainry, they could have moved up on the list or kind of lower on the list. So it's give and take, and there are a couple of new people in there in terms of characters, because they're not necessarily great characters, but they made really awesome villains. For maybe a couple of episodes and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really, really, really excited about this, and I think we should.
I'll let everybody know that only one character, from my previous list actually made this list. So it's going to be great that's what I'm really excited about is get to talk about some of these characters I didn't really get a chance to dig into as much.
Yeah, and there's nobody in the chat right now that counts as a villain yet. So, but that might change, if you look at our list and decide to have a beef with it. So, but it's all fun here, and it's not necessarily the best villains objectively, obviously, right? It's our own personal favorite villains. So, don't have a cow of your favorite villains not on anybody's list tonight. So let's go ahead and start. Essentially, I like to start out with this slide because, I used it already when we talked about favorite movie villains. But, I think it's applicable for tonight's show. Basically, what makes a good villain, right? Besides the mustache. Well, there's a few things, right? One is, they usually are convinced that they're the good guys. So, they're doing the right thing. They have many likable qualities, right? Everybody loves a good villain, and they could be charming, very politically astute, very charismatic, if you will. They're a worthy enough opponent to make your hero look good. Okay, you love it or you like it when they're on stage. Okay, you can't get enough of the villain when they're on screen. They're clever and accomplished enough that people might lend them begrudging respect. Not all people love villains. They might hate villains, but you got to respect a villain, a good villain. They have many of the same characteristics as the hero, but again, they're misdirected. They can be merciless even to the innocent, or ruthless. Okay, that's enough said about that. They're persuasive, deceitful, and are vengeful. And lastly, he or she will stop at nothing to get what he or she wants. So here's just some kind of common traits that make up a good villain. Anything you want to add to this, Dawg, or you have an issue with? Or
not at all. I was thinking through my list as you're going through those again, and I was kind of thinking of most of my villains have these traits, if not all of them at times, right? There's times where especially a lot of times they're convinced that they're the good guy. They have likable qualities, right? They're persuasive, deceitful, vengeful.
Yep.
There's especially that likable qualities things. There's times where we actually empathize with these villains.
Yeah.
at times as well. I think that's what makes him great, and also making our hero look good, right? That's also a key to it.
Yeah,
I noticed that one jumped at me as well. So
yeah.
great to see that list here again today, Milt.
Yeah, and what I've noticed about Game of Thrones is that, I mean, there are really only a couple of really psychopathic, truly evil characters that you might count as a classic villain. They're just pure evil, right? They was just kill innocents, do whatever do whatever they want to do. But then there's like this abundance of kind of like morally gray characters where you as a viewer might think that they're a villain, whereas somebody else who's watching the show might think they're not a villain, So it's kind of, I mean, it's what makes the show so great, right? I mean, there is this abundance of kind of like ambiguous, morally gray characters. What do you think, Dawg, about that? Is that true?
Definitely. I mean, because I think there's a couple on my list that folks might be going, you know what, that's a good guy. What are you talking about here?
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
And Chrissy, I think you might be unsubscribing after tonight, Chrissy. Just warning you. So I think, but again, this is pure show here. Okay, I mean, people are portrayed in HBO show kind of differently a lot of times than how they're portrayed in the books. In the books they can be even more villainous, or they can be better people. So it all depends. But we're just going about we're just basically framing this in the context of the TV show. So with that, I think we're going to start off with our honorable mentions and then get into our top 5 list. And we have Dawg to go first as the visiting team. What is your honorable mention?
Right. Thank you, Milt. And my honorable mention here, folks, is Lord Peter Baelish, Littlefinger. So this is the man that pretty much started the whole thing off for us, right? With the murder of Jon Arryn. He was behind the whole entire, the whole entire plot, if you will, right? Getting it kicked off, right? And I always loved, hearing about, how his backstory kind of tied in with a lot of things, my thinking of what he really wanted, right? Was, he was in a duel with Brandon Stark, right? Basically to get the favor of Catelyn Tully, right? And he loses this duel, right? And, and Catelyn basically begs for his life, things of that nature, right? But I think from that time on, he always just absolutely hated the Starks, and he absolutely hated the Tullys from that, and he was pretty much going to be out for their complete destruction, if you will, right? So, but he starts it off, and he has us thinking that he's on Caitlyn's side, possibly, right? And by the time the season's winding down, he betrays Ned, and that was like, that's what made him, pretty brilliant there. Cause also, all that time prior to that, he made Ned look great on screen. Right. Just with, their banter, as they're walking through the garden, if you will. Right. And he's like, telling him about, this is so-and-so spy and this is so-and-so spy and all this stuff. Right. And you should never trust me. Right. And he's basically just telling Ned, I'm basically the bad guy here. Right. But, it just made, he was just an absolutely fantastic character. I loved his earlier season stuff, right? Just to get into when we get into season 2 a little bit, what's also fantastic about him is that he's kind of got Caitlyn kind of fooled that, he's such a great person, right? He's going to do the honorable thing and he brings Ned's bones back, right? And it's like, this is the scumbag that is behind this whole entire thing, the downfall of Ned, if you will, really, right? So, and then, we get into, after the Red Wedding, things of that nature, right? We get into, the other things he's doing behind the scenes, trying to get rule over the Vale, right? Lordship, with Lysa, things of that nature, right? But it's all a big plot to, kill Joffrey, take Sansa, right? And, just basically create chaos, right? That's all he basically does. Just like he kind of says is that he's the, you never suspect he wants to be the guy that you never suspect,
Yeah.
right? Something along that line, right? So it's always the least one you suspect or something like that, and that's basically what he is through this whole entire thing. Even by, by his end, even he still has Cersei fooled, kind of, right? She's still like summoning him back, and he's the one that basically had Sansa Stark and sent her off to Ramsay Bolton, right? And Cersei knew about that. It probably would have been like off with his head right there. That's what I would have thought that at the time, right? But he's even still has her fooled, with that sort of thing, right? There's another thing I wanted to mention about him, because I think his story kind of peters out a little bit, right? With at the end with the Sansa thing, right? He comes in kind of like in the Lord of the Rings fashion, if you will, and saves the day with the Lords of the Vale, right? And then he kind of goes out, just with that little plot, with the sisters and things of that nature. Right? I thought he would have gone out a little bit better, right? I was kind of hoping that he would have made it to season 8 and had a little bit better. I would have liked to seen him encounter like the White Walkers and things of that nature, right? And seen how his character reacted to something like that, right? So, but hats off to Littlefinger. It was, he was great for a while, and he'll be missed, if you will. So, what are your thoughts on Baelish here, Mel?
Well, maybe next week there might be a Littlefinger versus a Night King matchup in a Clash for Crows stream. Littlefinger, Microfinger, Pattaya Baelish, whatever you want to call him. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely my favorite character in all of Game of Thrones, and being a villain just makes him a lot better. Yeah, I mean, his greatest power was the fact that he was able to basically be on a small console surrounded by very powerful people, but yet nobody suspected him as being, the guy behind the curtains manipulating all the events that led up to the basically War of the Five Kings. And, this guy is ultimately responsible for basically thousands, if not tens of thousands of deaths, throughout Westeros, just to basically achieve his own, basically greedy ends, right? I mean, all he wants to do is basically, basically fulfill his kind of like his desire to, marry a Tully or a part Tully and basically, gain power and mass power through chaos, essentially. And yeah, I mean, great character, really good character. You think justice was served at the end for him in the show?
Yeah, I think it kind of was. I just kind of wish there would have been just a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't know, just a little bit deeper than, oh, you were basically, we caught you basically trying to, plot the sisters against one another kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just kind of, I thought he was being a season 1 character, right? And a very important character in season 1. I just kind of wish that would have, kind of went out a little bit better, if you will. So that was just kind of my feeling on it.
Yeah.
But justice was served, right?
Yeah.
All our questions about, how is Sansa ever, and how are the Starks going to find out about what happened in that throne room that day, right? Well, we finally found out. Bran told everybody that, you told my father you shouldn't trust me, basically, right? So, and that was basically the end of him.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought as like, kind of like, the acting region of the, of the Vale, and then Lord Paramount of the, of the Riverlands at that point, that he would have kind of like had, would have been basically been able to like, get a trial by combat or something like that. But nope, everybody believed the Starks, and away he went. Yeah, it was kind of a bad death for him, I thought, considering, how integral he was in terms of basically, manipulating and controlling all the events, leading up to that, of the War of the Five Kings, and basically all of the chaos he instilled to go out that way. But hey, the writers have to focus on other things like, the Battle of the Dawn.
Right. Like he had absolutely no chance in that trial too, because like even when he tried to like semi-escape, it wasn't like even like the guys that were underneath him were going to listen to him ever, right? He was basically threatening. What was the other guy's name? Was it Royce?
Bronze John Royce.
Absolutely right. I mean, it was like, yeah, he was basically getting threatened to get thrown out the moon door, a few episodes prior to that, right? So it wasn't like he was going to come to his aid or anything of that nature, right? So
so it's a great choice. We may be hearing a little bit more about him later on in the stream. So for my honorable mention is no other than one of my favorite characters of all, and that's Carl Fucking Tanner, right? Can't beat this guy. I love talking about this guy. He's a legend of Gin Alley, from Gin Alley, master of the double daggers. The guy I want on my side in the bar brawl, because he can fight and fight dirty. And what was more classic about this guy than like drinking wine out of like Jorah Mormont's skull? I mean that was like a scene out of Shakespeare, if anything. So he was a little bit one-dimensional and everything like that, but he had a lot of good screen presence, and he was definitely memorable to me, at least for those 2 episodes that he appeared on. And Fucking legend, right? I mean, how can you forget this guy? And part of the reason why he's such a good villain is because he's unforgettable. So, and he almost offed Jon, right? He almost killed Jon Snow, our hero. He almost penetrated the plot armor, except for interference from that one of Craster's wives. He almost did it, and he came close to doing it, a lot closer than a lot of people did. So that's my honorable mention, Carl Fucking Tanner.
Oh, well done here. And you know what? Milt brought up a great point. This is a very memorable character. I mean, he's more memorable in just a couple episodes than some of the characters that we've seen, in a few seasons, right?
Yeah.
So just he had great lines, right? I mean, it's one of my I don't know if we've ever done like a top scenes before, Milt. I know we did episodes before, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we did episodes. Yep.
Yeah, like season 3, episode 6, I think it is, right? And when Craster meets his demise, right? That's one of my favorite scenes in all of Game of Thrones.
Yep. It was and now his watches ended was the one where Carl Tanner led the coup or the mutiny against Craster and Gior.
Yeah, that's just absolutely fantastic because he lets Craster goes through his little spiel for a bit, right? And then Mormont tries to send the other guy. What was his name, like Rast or something like that?
Yeah, Rast. Yep.
Yeah, and he drags him out, and then next thing you hear is, "You're a bastard," and then he just lays into him, right? And then within like 1 second, that dagger's right in his gullet, if you will, right? So, or his throat, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he's a legend. He knows how to use those daggers, right?
Right, and then he gave Jon all Jon could possibly take there, and it looked a little rough for Jon.
Exactly.
Luckily, Jon had a little angel behind him there.
Yeah,
and it worked out right. But he made our hero look better, because that's a great scene when Carl Tanner does meet his end. They kind of made the sword on the side of the head kind of look pretty cool, I guess. So
and and again, he did come closest to basically killing off the main hero of the whole series, right? He probably came the closest to killing off the main hero of the series, because I mean that White Walker that Jon fought at Hardhome didn't put up half as much fight as Carl Tanner did with Jon in that hut, wouldn't you think?
I'm sorry, Mel.
I mean that White Walker that Jon fought at Hardhome didn't put up like half as much fight as Carl Tanner did against him in that hut.
No. The only thing I will say about that White Walker though is that he had Jon absolutely beat. I'll give this to bad choreography or writing or something, right? Because when we see Jon going for that dragon glass, like why doesn't White Walker just skewer Jon at that point, right? Instead, he just grabs him and throws him across the room.
Yeah,
but that's my favorite episode of all time, right? But if I had, there's just some things I notice once in a while, but that White Walker didn't last. A blink compared to Carl Tanner.
Exactly, and that's why he's on the list. So I guess we're gonna start now with our top 5s, and Dawg, you're up.
All right, folks. So my number 5 here is Stannis Baratheon. And I know some of our book folks in the community are probably like, whoa, because I know there's a lot of Stannis fans out there, right? But I was actually kind of surprised he wasn't a little higher on my list, come to think of it. But, Stannis's, I didn't really find anything really good about him, but there are definitely likable qualities with this character, right? That make you kind of empathize with him at times, right? That make you hope that he is gonna, break through and go to the light side of the force, if you will, right? But all in all, he was an absolutely dark character by the end of it that we see, right? So that was one of the roughest scenes I've ever had to watch. It's one of the scenes that I think I've only watched it maybe a dozen times compared to like 500,000 times of the other, stuff. Right. So, it's a little rough to taste by the end of it. Right. So, let's just talk about some of the, evil things that he's kind of done. Right. He killed his own brother, with blood magic. Right. Even in the beginning, right. We look at Maester, Crescent, I believe. Is that right, Milt?
Yeah, Maester Crescent was his
yeah. So Maester Crescent, I think he'd been serving Stannis for probably a long time, right?
For his whole life.
Is that true?
For his whole life.
Yeah, for like his whole entire life, right? Yeah. So and he just kind of throws him off to the side, and I got to read Crescent's part in the book. I'm about 100 pages in, but anyway, it was kind of sad to see like how Crescent was trying to reach him and, been with this person, his entire life, and he just throws him off to the side to kind of get, fed to Melisandre, if you will. Right. So, that's just that kind of stern side of him that we see right off the bat. But the show doesn't really give you the depth of like the Crescent relationship. I didn't feel, as much as what the book gives you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and it's only because that Crescent scene was basically from the point of view of Crescent. So,
I mean, he saved Shireen's life, right? I mean, it's things of that nature, right? So, I mean, even Davos, right? We find out that Davos basically saves this man from starvation and things of that nature. He cuts, half the guy's hand off, right? So
yeah, but to be fair, he also made him a lord after that because good and bad deeds, bad deeds cut both ways.
Right,
good deeds cut both ways. So.
It just seems a bit extreme at times, right? To burn people just because they are worshiping the gods of their fathers and the fathers before them and the fathers before them and things of that nature, right? So. People that are commanded to take those false gods down, if you will, and worship this Lord of Light, right, are burned at the stake, right? So, I want to get into something else I had about that. Yeah, he burns folks and their families, basically. We see, a prime example of that is Mance Rayder, right? Whether you like Mance or not. I mean, he basically he has Mance burned at the stake.
In the show, in the show, yes.
If you will, right? And then again, we've been with this character for so long, and we've seen his trials, tribulations, things of that nature. And I'm like hoping that he's going to break through and go over to the light side of the Force. And then he burns his own daughter, right? Yeah. So, and at that point, I was just like, I can't wait for this character to be off the screen and meet his demise, if you will, right? So, and he does. And I think that's about all I have on Stannis at the moment. Let me know your thoughts on that, Milt.
Yeah, sure. Dog. I mean, I think there's gonna be a couple of these slides where we might have disagreements. I don't consider Stannis really, to me at least, a villain. I mean, sure, he's not gonna win any Father of the Year awards or that kind of stuff, right? But, to me, I mean, he was kind of like the rightful king of Westeros at the time. And he basically killed his brother because his brother tried to usurp him. And it was either he die or, Renly die, right? So, it was basically self-preservation at that point because they weren't going to reconcile in the show. So, I mean, if a man truly believes that he is the rightful king, and if his family, his brother standing against him, then he might not have a choice but to basically kill off his brother. And it's been done multiple times throughout human history. He was a hard man, a just man. The thing of Davos is extreme, obviously, but But Stannis had an extreme sense of justice, right? If you do a bad thing, you do a bad thing, you should be punished. But if you do a good thing, you know, like Davos did by saving Stannis, you know, you're rewarded as a lord, right? So, and no, I mean, I can't think of another lord that would rise up a smuggler to become, to be in a position of essentially his hand, his hand. So, you know, because most lords consider smugglers lowborn and whatnot. So, you know, it's that kind of extreme sense of justice and that Stannis actually personifies. The show kind of did a little bit of a character assassination of his, of him, versus the books. I'm not sure in the books whether or not he would have the balls to basically, light his kid on fire. But, I could see how a lot of people would think of him as a villain. And I think a lot of people in the chat do consider him a villain or very unlikable and whatnot. And again, no, he's not gonna win any Father of the Year awards, right? Obviously. But, I mean, he did save Jon, right? He did save Jon from the wildlings, right? By basically crushing them at the end of season 4, because, he was the one that actually believed in Melisandre's prophecies and actually figured out that there was a greater war to fight. So, and I don't know. I mean, he's not, to me, he's more of a morally gray character, like a lawful neutral. If he had to play like Dungeons and Dragons, Stannis would be like a classic lawful neutral character, just basically he would just go by the letter of the law, and be totally just, but not evil. So to me, not really a villain.
I would call him lawful evil.
Okay.
Just because of what he did at the end. But and again, you made up a great point. I'm looking at it as an absolute show, as a show watcher kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You brought up the great point I wanted to make about also with Jon. He makes our hero look better, right? Sure. I mean, the scenes with Jon are great scenes. I love, and he has likable traits. This is a character that has absolutely likable traits. He's our favorite grammar Nazi, right?
Yep.
Fewer. But you know what? Did you notice how he kind of turns into Jack Nicholson in The Shining?
In which scene? I think
I was looking at I think a closer view of like that scene I have there in the bottom right there. He
grows a beard, right, as we progressively get into the series, and he looks a little bit more disheveled. But I mean, he could look like Jack Torrance from The Shining.
Yeah, he gave me that vibe.
All right, so. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, I mean, I can understand why some people would think of him as a villain. Well, personally, I wouldn't. But hey, that's why we have these lists. Right?
Again, that you brought that point up. Yeah. I'm looking forward to reading more about him. I'm like at the point of where I just finished a chapter where Dany, they're at that city of bones, right? And she sends out her blood riders and stuff to try to find other cities and stuff or whatever. So
great. All right. So you think justice was served at the end for this guy?
Yeah, I would have liked to seen his death on screen a little bit. I still had, I mean, it was kind of hokey how, they kind of had to do it at the same time because this character, again, we mentioned this on I think yesterday's stream actually, how, or there was another stream we did earlier this week, Milt, where we talked about Stannis and, he's the kind of guy that's going to get on the front line, right? He's that king that, again, that's a likable trait to me that, he's willing to get on the front line and things of that nature, right? But by the time his army is absolutely surrounded, things of that nature, it's an absolute wipeout. He's just kind of off in the field somewhere and here comes Brienne, right? So, but yeah, I mean, justice was served by the end of it, right? He admitted to the murder of his brother and, the other crimes he'd committed to. So all the burnings and, the death of his, but I think really by the end of it, he was just a beaten soldier, broken man, broken king. Right.
Yeah. I mean, for such a kind of like, I mean, he's not integral, but he's definitely major in a major character in the story. I mean, I definitely would have liked to have seen, his death on screen. I think that was kind of a a disservice to the fans, to basically put his death off screen. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe they didn't want, Brienne to be covered in blood and guts, or something like that, because to spoil the image of her being like the perfect knight or whatever. But anyway, cool. So that is Stannis Baratheon as Dawg's number 5. Well, for my number 5, Chrissy, I think you better unsubscribe. It's none other than Euron Greyjoy. Okay, I mean, if only he had an eye patch on his left eye, that'd be perfect. And that's the only thing I kind of dislike about his characterization in the show. But I think he's great. I mean, in terms of like portraying, basically kind of acting like how he's described in the book. I think he's doing a pretty good job. Okay, he's been portrayed pretty well in the show. I mean, he's wildly unpredictable, right? He's charming. He's cruel. I mean, he's like this vicious Ironborn, and he loves to basically wage psychological warfare on anybody around him. I mean, case in point, I mean, think of all the trolling he did with Jaime, right? Does she like it when you put your finger in her bum? He said it to Jaime. I mean, that's the classic line, and I mean, he's proven himself to be a pretty good naval commander too. And the way he just basically took out, the whole Tyrell and Dornish Navy in one swift blow was awesome. And, I mean, he's great. I mean, I just love this guy. He basically, after the battle, with the Dornish and the Greyjoys, he basically, trucks all the captives down the road, with leashes and stuff like that through King's Landing. I think that's pretty cool. And he basically acted like Julius Caesar coming back from Gaul, and and he's great fighter. I mean, especially in the scene over the burning ships, right? How he took out 2 of the sand snakes. Not that they did not deserve it, but just with these, made him a great. To me, he's a great villain. Again, he's vicious, cruel. To me, he has a lot of presence on screen, and yeah, I mean, to me, he's unforgettable. I mean, I look forward to seeing him more next season because you don't know what he's going to do, right? I mean, the theory is that he's going back to Essos. Well, it's not a theory. This Cersei said in the show, right? He's going back to Essos to recruit the Golden Company. So I would love to see scenes of him negotiating with a Southstar company to bring him over to Westeros. And who knows? Maybe he'll be like at the head of a Southsword army riding on a war elephant, right? So, good stuff. And he's even better in the books, but. I think his psychological warfare game is perfectly portrayed here. I mean, it's not just him to Jaime, right? He also played the same psychological warfare game to basically Theon, and he's doing it with Cersei, but in kind of a different way. So, yeah, he started out kind of slow, right, when he was first introduced, but last season I think he really came on in a big way. So that's my number 5 is Euron.
It's a great choice here also. And I was trying to think of likable traits because there's not a lot I do like about this character, right? But, that makes, sometimes that makes him a great villain too. But yeah. I loved his christening, right? Yeah. That was like my favorite scene in that. The King's Moot wasn't like my favorite scene, but I loved how, how they christened their king basically, right? They drowned the dude, right? And then, if he comes back to life, then you're king, right? And if not, I don't know what, again, I think I asked that before one time. I was like, would they have just said, hey, Yara, come back or something, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy's, he's kind of coming to his own now, right? He has good banter with Cersei, right? Hey, if Cersei's a hero to you, yeah, he makes her look better on screen, right? And Jaime as well, right? That was a great scene. Just kind of like how he's kind of giving one up on Jaime, if you will, kind of, a little bit of trash talk, if you will.
Exactly,
kind of,
a lot of smack, yeah. And
a lot of trash, right? But
yeah, and to me, I mean, a lot of people might compare him to like Ramsay Bolton, but I think, I said in that one slide, he isn't. I don't think he's as impulsive as Ramsay Bolton is, right? And everybody loves Ramsay as a villain because he's psychopathic. I mean, but this guy he is actually capable of basically, developing, long-term strategies. I think he has a long-term strategy in place here, in the books, definitely, but I think in the show as well. I mean, that's why I'm really curious to see what happens to him, next season. How's his character going to play out during the war, right? When he brings the Sellsword company, the Sellswords over and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah. So
and what was great about this character also was that, Like, you know, a lot of folks aren't very happy with Dorne, of course, right? And then like the snakes and things of that nature. And he basically just trucks those two, right? And you know, basically gets them. He's like, okay, you guys don't want Dorne anymore. It's going away. I'm gonna help you out here, right?
I mean, he basically killed off 2 sand snakes who evidently have like, you know, supernatural teleportation abilities to get on a boat, you know, without being spotted and kill off the heir of a Dorne, Justine Martell.
And I mean,
just saying. I mean,
the only question I have is, how did he get all those ships built, 1,000 ships built that quickly?
Well, I mean, okay, look, okay. I mean, everybody makes a joke. You know, I think there's a meme out there, like, you know, what they do show is a picture of Pike, right? And there's no trees there, so how can they build 1,000 ships and no trees? But remember, there's like 8 Iron Islands, okay, if you count the Lonely Light. So maybe on the other islands, right, there's dense forests with a lot of ships. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'll say, right? Because they only show that one scene, right, of Pike, but you know, there's 6 more major islands there that could be heavily forested.
Well, there you have it, folks.
Okay. So potentially you can, you know, potentially, you know, I'm not sure in 3 months or 2 months you can build 1,000 ships, but hey, I mean, maybe, you know, maybe he offers like really good bonuses and overtime pay. Anyway, so that's my number 5. You're on Greyjoy, and we're gonna go with Dawg's number 4 here, and it is, go for it.
Yep, my number 4 here, folks, is Ramsay Bolton, right? So I believe we meet Ramsay in season 2, probably around the end of season 2 on the show, right? But this is a great character. Again, I know his book counterpart is a little different. I don't think they're as I don't think they look alike, right? Let's just put it that way, right? But I think they did a great job with this character, because I think we had lost Joffrey at one point, you know, because he was kind of a nice little villain we had in there, and then they kind of handed it off to Ramsay, right? And I thought he did well, if you will, right? So even villains, you know, because like Theon does some really bad things, right? He, you know, pretty much takes over Winterfell, leaves our heroes in disarray, right? Kills the 2 farm boys. And by the end of it, we are absolutely empathizing and sympathizing with Theon Greyjoy at that time, right? So, you know, some of the most fantastic scenes are kind of after when he's when the transformation of Reek, right? And we see the scene of you know, him getting a shave from Theon, and how, you know, how he just tells him that, you know, hey, my dad killed your best friend, and things of that nature, right? And you know, he just has absolutely complete control of this character now, right? Just like it's one of his hounds, right? So he is usually one up on you know, even, you know, Sansa, right? He's one up on Theon, of course. Even he was one up on Yara when she tried to rescue Theon. You know, and he's done some absolutely grotesque things too, right? I mean, the old woman that he filleted, basically, right? The girls that he would hunt down in the forest, things of that nature, right? And even when it looks like, you know, there might be some sort of compassion in his heart for something, right? Like Miranda, right? You know, by the end of it, it's like, you know, hey, feed her to the dogs. It's good meat, right? So this is an absolutely despicable madman, if you will, right? But I always called him. He's like if any folks remember Leave It to Beaver, the character Eddie Haskell, right? This is Eddie Haskell if he was an absolute madman, and you know, and just flayed people and things of that nature, right? The things he's done to you know, Sansa, right? You know, he killed Rickard Stark, right? The Battle of the Bastards, all that stuff that you know, that kind of led up to that as well, right? And even the demise of his you know, of his own father, if you will, too, things of that nature. But those were great scenes with him and his father too, because it was because you would think that's what I loved about Roose. Also, was that Roose wasn't like, you know, like when Ramsay would screw up, Roose wouldn't just like slap him in the head or something like that. He would actually listen to what Ramsay had to say a little bit. And for the most part, Ramsay usually, had something up on his own father, even, right, to do even better, right. He'd use Reek in a different way, right, to get Mo Kalen, even though, it was kind of alluded to that, Roose gave him that idea, right. But like how he kind of, took down Stannis, or he sabotaged Stannis's camp, things of that nature too. But it was nice to see him go out, and he even took out 1-1 by the end of it. So, and that kind of hurt, just to make us hate him all the more. If we didn't hate you all the more, right? You got that last blow in on 1-1 and smiled, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and in typical TV movie villain or movie villain kind of like personality, he basically goes for the kill on 1-1 instead of going for the kill on the main hero standing right next to him. So, but I think he was just trying to prove that he was a really good archer and can basically put an arrow through a giant's eye. I think Ramsay's great. He's definitely the best psychopath. Well, I wouldn't say he's the best psychopath. I think there's a better psychopath than Ramsay in the show, but he's definitely a very memorable psychopath in terms of his pure viciousness. And if anybody was sort of like the Joker from Batman, it'll be this guy, right? For sure. He is the Joker essentially. He's unpredictable. He's vicious or cruel, like a lot of our villains in Game of Thrones. He's a great villain, and poor Theon Greyjoy / Freak. In season 3 and 4, he was just getting broken down so bad that you kind of really feel for Theon with all the stuff that all the crap that he had to go through in the torture chamber with Ramsay, and afterwards he was brutal. In the books he's really, really brutal too. Like there are some scenes that you couldn't possibly show on TV, but the fact that he killed off his stepmother and her newborn baby in the show was pretty wicked and dastardly. And,
he doesn't. It doesn't matter the age or. There's no compassion in this character at all, right? Just pure madness and evil.
Yeah, and Eddie Haskell. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that a lot more than Lumpy Rutherford. Remember that guy, Lumpy?
Oh yeah, Lumpy, big fat ape.
Okay, excuse the Leave It to Beaver references here on the show. So we're gonna go with my number 4. Sorry about that. I got a phone call, and it is none other than Walder Frey Sr., or what we can call the late Lord Walder. Okay, obviously he's always late. Okay, I love this guy. Argus Filch, right from Harry Potter. But he played a really mean Argus Filch in Game of Thrones. I can imagine Argus Filch in feudal society as Lord of the Twins would probably be just as bad as Walder Frey. But anyway, his character was great. He was envious, prideful, abusive, right? And he had this really long memory, right? He would always remember a slight towards them, and at the end of the day, he basically used those slights to do some really, really bad stuff, in terms of breaking guest right and breaking a lot of laws under the eyes of the gods. And hosted the Red Wedding. There's a scene, a reference in the Duncan Egg books where Sir Duncan the Tall actually thought about, throwing Walder Frey down a well. That would have saved a lot of issues later on, like 80 years later. If he did that, but it was just how annoying this guy was, right? And he was definitely annoying, and plus, he ended up being a cannibal at the end, albeit unintentionally. But he was a cannibal, and nobody likes cannibals, right? So, and I just love the way he was portrayed. He did a really good portrayal, of the character, and it was very similar to that of the book. So, which is great. Kudos on D&D for basically portraying his character so similar to the books. Love the guy. Not a total psychopath like a Ramsay Bolton, right? But definitely, you know, just a really, really spiteful person that, you know, the viewers love to hate. And he did some pretty bad stuff. And, you know, that's why, you know, he's such a memorable villain for me. So that's why I have him on my list as number 4. And justice was definitely served. Great, great death scene with Arya.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great actor.
Yeah.
And I mean, this villain is probably, I mean, it's arguably, you know, one of the most memorable episodes, of course, with the Red Wedding, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was like, you know, Mr. Filch, what you doing? You know,
Yep.
so, but you know, even his last scene, you know, pardon me, as you know, Arya has his face on, right? That was absolutely outstanding. You know, the speech he gives and things of that nature, right? So it was great to have him in this role. And yeah, you hit it right out of the ballpark, Milt, when you talked about, you know, he was just annoying, right? But
Yeah.
it was like, you know, the banter he'd have with Caitlyn, right?
Yeah.
When they were talking, right? Or anybody else, right? He'd always say something that would just make you go, ugh. You know, it's just like, you know, it'd make you cringe just a little bit inside. It's like you wouldn't want your granddad saying that or something of that nature, right? So
Yeah, exactly. You know, and he was only around for maybe, I think maybe he was appeared maybe 4 or 5 episodes in the whole series, but he always had these great one-liners, right? I mean, he's just a filthy mouth old man as well. You know, a total lecher essentially. So yeah, I mean, I thought he was great. So it's my number 4 villain.
Yeah, I wish Mrs. Norris would have made a cameo though.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Norris basically transformed into Sir Pounce in Game of Thrones. That's my guess. You know, the budget only had room for 1 cat. Both budgets, evidently. So, all right. So okay, we're on to number 3 here. So take it away.
All right,
Dawg,
and
my
number 3 here is is Tywin Lannister, folks, the granddaddy of them all, right? As far as the lions go, and yeah, I just thinking back to, you know, what makes him just a despicable villain, if you will, right? Is just when you think back to, you know, the orders he gave the Mountain, you know, on Rhaegar and Elliot's children, if you will, right?
Yeah.
You know, so we get the backstory on him of kind of a despicable person, right? Or somebody that has no mercy for the weak, if you will, right? So I just made a Karate Kid reference. I didn't mean to do that, but
that's good. All references are awesome here.
Right. So his first scene is fantastic, right? Because I love the symbolism, how you know, the lion is skinning the stag, right, and butchering the stag there, right? It's just symbolic of, I'm going to take down the Baratheon house.
Sure.
And now he's chastising Jaime behind him, right? And so we get the feeling, because before we had met Jaime, and you know, he seemed like he was kind of the king lion of amongst all of them, right? And Tyrion at times too, but Tyrion was kind of in trouble with Caitlyn at the time, right? But you know, Jaime seemed like he had a grip on, you know, on this house, right? But now we met, you know, who's really pulling the strings here, right? And it's Tywin Lannister here, right? So he's responsible for. Oh, I also wanted to go back to the scene when he's talking with Jaime, right? Because like we see he has different motivations and different things that he would do compared to what Jaime would do, right? Jaime, even though he stabbed his own king in the back, he still wouldn't kill Ned Stark, right? And Tywin's questioning that, you know, why is he still alive, right? You know, because it's not clean. You know, you and your code and things of that nature, right? And but now we get a nice feel of, you know, he has likable traits. You know, this character definitely has likable traits. Even when I think some of my favorite scenes are with him and Arya in Harrenhal, right? And I used to think, I'm like, wow, if these two weren't mortal enemies, they'd probably, you know, probably like one another, right? Or, you know, be pretty powerful allies together. Also, oh yeah, I mean, but basically, he's behind the scheming behind what happens at the red wedding. At the red wedding, right? He's responsible for the massacre. So all those scenes and the grotesque scenes that we see of like, I think her name was Talia, right? Uh, or Talisa, was that her name? Rob's
Yeah, to Lisa
wife.
Stark, yeah,
Yeah.
in the show.
Yeah, like he's basically responsible for that, right? Caitlin Stark's death, Rob Stark's death, right? So, pretty much the mental torture, if you will, of Tyrion Lannister, and pretty much all his children, right? They all have defects because of him now. Um, we can see how ruthless he can be with like characters such as Olenna Tyrell, right? Even as powerful and witty and fierce as Olenna seems to be, right? Tywin still has one up on her and gets what he wants in the end of it. Just when we think that he's going to get his, like with Oberyn Martell, things of that nature, right? He's one up on Oberyn Martell, and Oberyn Martell's gone, right? So until by the end of it, justice is pretty much served on him by his own son Tyrion Lannister. And the other great part about this character, and I'll shut up, is this character made every scene he's in. I love every scene that this actor's in. Right, he makes Joffrey better. Right, he makes Tyrion better. He makes Cersei better. Jaime, all of them. I can't think of one scene that this guy is in that I didn't like. Yeah. And now something popped in my head about. I wish they would have kind of. I know why they deleted the scene, but I wish they would have somehow added that scene with him and Maester Pycelle, where he calls out Maester Pycelle and he's like, "Are you going to cut the BS about how you walk around all slow and things of that nature and that act?" And it's like, so it even showed that he knew more than pretty much everybody on the show. So. And with that, I'll shut up, Milton, and let you give me your thoughts on.
Well, Dawg, I hate to disagree with you again on Tywin Lannister as a villain, because I don't consider him a villain. I mean, he's my second favorite Game of Thrones character of all time. Tywin is the kind of like the epitome of a ruthless lord, right? That basically, that operates on cold-blooded utilitarian logic, right? I mean, he's an example of a person that basically where the means does justify the ends, because he wants to basically do things as efficiently as possible. In terms of pure evilness and villainy, I don't think he was a villain. I mean, he did orchestrate the Red Wedding, right? And it was a brutal thing. A lot of people died. Whatnot, our favorite characters died, but his response to that was, would you rather have 10,000 soldiers die in more battles or a dozen at dinner? Okay, and it's always like, it boils down to this question: do the ends justify the means? A lot of times, and different people have different views on that. It's a long-standing philosophical question, and in his case, I think it did, and then it did stabilize the country after that, right? There was no more war after that, and in his history, he was like the hand of the king under Aerys, and a very good, just hand of the king under Aerys. So I mean, the land was at peace with him as the hand of the king, and there was, he wasn't corrupt, in the sense that, he wasn't taking bribes or doing anything else like that, and basically making a whole shit show of the kingdom when he was in power. I mean, I really can't think of him as a villain. I mean, yeah, he's not a Father of the Year candidate. Okay, it's probably a dead heap. He's like the worst one, or a dead heap between him, Stannis, and Balon Greyjoy, right? As who's the worst father of all time in the show, but. I just can't, and then, yeah, he treats Tyrion bad, right? But, there are a lot of cases where you had, kings, especially in the medieval times, or lords that treated some of their sons bad for whatever reason. Either they were whoring or drinking or just being dwarfs or whatever. Tyrion was all three, obviously, but, it doesn't make him a really bad person. Yeah, so sure, he was opportunistic, right? Sure, he was ruthless to his enemies. I have to say that. He was ruthless to his enemies because he wanted wars and battles to end quickly. to to basically lessen the loss of life later on. I mean, I have a hard time thinking of him as a villain. I think of him as, just your typical, or very intelligent, very cunning medieval lord who was willing to do what it took to basically put things in order and to preserve his family's legacy. Because his main thing was that it was to preserve his family's legacy and make sure that they stayed in power. And I think he did everything to try to do everything to ensure that was the case. So, you might question his methods, you might question his morals. He's a sociopath. I wouldn't, he does exhibit some sort of, some kind of sociopathic tendencies, like, but then again, so do CEOs of large corporations. I don't know. I mean, he's a great guy. I mean, he's a great character. I just say great guy, but he's definitely a great character. So,
he's fantastic.
Yeah. That's all I'll say, Dawg. So, I wouldn't put him in as a villain. Definitely gray. And that's all I'll say about that, Dawg. But I see your points. I mean, definitely a lot of people do hate him. Because
one thing for sure is, again, like, especially for folks like, I look at Tyrion as a hero, kind of, right? So he makes Tyrion definitely look better. I mean, Peter Dinklage even won an Emmy for that, right? So, and another, I think my favorite scene with him is when Joffrey kind of loses his lid, right? And I am the king and all that, right? And if you ever catch like what I do love about because like that scene, he just has this big plain look on his face, right? Yeah. And as Joffrey's just like kind of blah 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 blah, he just has this look on his face. But if you ever notice all the like Jaime, Cersei, and Tyrion, once in a while, some of their scenes, they all do that same trait. I kind of caught that before, and I've always I love how they all kind of do that. It's kind of like that little Lannister trait about them, if you will. So, but he was definitely the king lion.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If there were kings of the kings of lions. So
yeah, and it was a great death, right? I mean, it was a pretty boss death, basically getting a couple of crossbow bolts, while he was sitting on the can. I mean, can't beat that.
Right. It was one of those chapters I definitely went and I read ahead and stuff. Yeah. Definitely read that chapter, and I was like, wow, this is absolutely fantastic writing. And
yeah. Very cool. So awesome. So Dawg's number 3, Tywin Lannister. So for my number 3, none other than the Night King. Who doesn't like to see this guy on screen? And we know that he's in the show. He's definitely the main villain in the show, right? I mean, he's the arch enemy. He's the Lightbringer, right? I mean, or Lucifer Morningstar is a theological joke there, but he's basically the greatest enemy of Westeros, right? And to me, he's like one of the most fascinating, if not, he's probably the most fascinating character, as we really know next to nothing about this guy, right? I mean, essentially, he once was human. The children of the forest, in all their infinite knowledge and wisdom, decided, let's go make this ultimate weapon to basically, kill off the first men because they're killing us in a war. And all of a sudden, he becomes this indestructible, machine that they've lost control of. Sort of like Ultron, in a way, right, from the Avengers. But again, we don't know a lot about this guy, but we definitely know he's the enemy. And when he's on screen, we definitely want to see more of him, I mean, he's already killed tens of thousands of people, right? Just marching through the north and, marching down north of the wall. And, I mean, he's making his way to Winterfell right now. And we will see what happens. But, he definitely has an evil intention, definitely an evil motive. And nobody knows what it is right now, but he definitely has something really malevolent on his mind. And that's all I'll say, because again, we know next to nothing about this guy, but he's definitely memorable and he's definitely fascinating.
Awesome, Mel. Yeah, and I think like we had like per capita like screen time per villainous things done. This guy's You know, I think he'd probably be top on the list of that, possibly, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
he probably has the biggest kill rate.
I mean, he left. I mean, it seems like every time he's in a scene,
Yeah,
by the time the scene's over, we're just in that downer mode of
yeah,
what just happened. It just feels so, you know, that sadness pit
yeah.
of, you know, what happened there at Hardhome, right?
Yep.
And losing Viserion, things of that
Hmm.
nature, right? Um, but then again here, right? It's like, you know, we don't know exactly as far as show watching goes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
All we know is that we'd met Leaf before.
Yep.
She kind of saved our heroes and brought them into the tree there, right?
Yep.
And
The cave. Yeah.
now we don't know anything about this guy other than what Leaf had told us, that they were fighting a war against the First Men.
Yep.
And so they created and that was my theory on this whole thing, is that, you know, the Night King, he's basically Ultron,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah,
So
Ultron.
he was
The ultimate
created
weapon.
to protect,
Hmm.
and now he has decided that, you know what, I can just destroy all the conflict by wiping out the whole entire race of everything
Yeah.
and cover the world in ice.
Hmm.
So just like, you know, Sauron in the Lord of the Rings, how he wants to cover the world in darkness, this guy wants to cover the world in ice, right? So I think it's, you know, that's my theory on it. There might be more to his story. You know, is he Stark, right? Is he a Targaryen because he can ride a dragon?
Hmm.
You know, things of that nature, right? We don't know, right? So, but definitely, and you know, hopefully we find out a little bit more about the Night King. So.
Yeah, and if he does fail at his primary mission of taking over Westeros, he could always try out for the Westerosi javelin throwing team because he has a pretty good aim with that spear. So and pretty good range. So let's go to our top two, guys. We are on our top two, and Dawg, take it away. Who's your number two?
All right, my number two here, folks, is, I believe, the in the history of television, like if we were ever gonna like characterize somebody as a schmuck, right? This is he is the top schmuck in the history of television, right? And I'm gonna give that to Jackie Gleason's portrayal of Joffrey Baratheon. So yeah, right away we know this kid's a schmuck just from I think one of his first line or scenes is you know, with Tyrion slapping him there a little bit, right? I mean, we just went through this harrowing scene with Bran being tossed out a window, and you know, he has absolutely no sympathy for you know, characters around him, right? So he has no mercy. He's an absolute madman, you know, inside of the things of despicable things that he will do, right? But at the same time, he's a little different than Ramsay, I think, just because Ramsay likes to turn everything into like a game, if you will.
Yeah.
Right, where Joffrey just believes that he is, christened by God, if you will, right, or the chosen one, right?
Yeah.
But you know, he can basically he's basically the Mad King, right? So, yeah, we you know, I think we have a conflict with Arya, of course, right, at the Trident, and we can see that he's a deceitful character, right? And his mom's got his back, of course, right? And things of that nature. But, you know, outside he's got I'm going to use a dog reference, right? He's got a big bark, but he has absolutely no bite to him, right? So we see he's opposite of Stannis, right? He's not going to be that king that's going to, you know, just hop into the front lines of battle and give morale boost to his men, things of that nature. He's not going to give a rousing speech, right? He expects people to give rousing speeches about him, right? So, you know, so how dare they, right? So, basically the torturing of the mental torture of Sansa, right? The beheading of Ned Stark, of course, right? I mean, and then the absolute. It was like, you know, I use a little football reference here. I'm on references today. I don't know why, but it's kind of like doing a touchdown dance for just a little bit too long, right? He takes Sansa and shows off the George Bush head and things of that nature, right? But so it was just like he was always like he'd get that touchdown and he'd celebrate for just a little bit too long, right? So, and I can't think of any time that this character had a likable trait. You know, he once in a while he might make you think that he might turn. I think when he apologized to Sansa, I think his mom kind of talked him into apologizing to Sansa, and you're like, you know, maybe he could possibly turn, but we all knew that, you know, this was definitely going to be a villain on the show, of course, right? So, yeah, he pretty much, you know, mentally tortures Sansa, of course, right? He's pretty much responsible for the assassination attempt on his own uncle. And then what a great way that they had him go out. So, I mean, when you have that, not a lot of times when the episode ends, are we in like that cheerful mood or mode or things of that nature, right? But by the time it was over, I was pretty happy he was gone, right? And I was just like, that was absolutely fantastic scene. And hats off to Jackie. I call him Jackie, but I think Jack Gleason, right?
Yeah, because he lost a lot of weight. He was Jackie Gleason. It was Jack Gleason. Yeah. Just kidding. All right. All right. Yeah, great choice, Dawg. Yeah, Joffrey's definitely one of the best characters ever. And yeah, I mean, I love the guy. And when I was mentioning like who was even more of a psychopath than Ramsay, I think Joffrey and Lannister / Baratheon was pretty much, I think, up there with Ramsay in terms of pure psychopathy. And the worst thing about this guy was that he was in a position of power too. You know, being a psychopath. So he had the potential of basically, you know, doing a lot of damage. Not that he didn't do a lot of damage, but, you know, based on his actions, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of people died, you know, in the books and the show. And, you know, yeah, he's just a very spiteful, very spoiled, you know, very, you know, sadistic, you know, cruel person. And, you know, just like his mom in some ways. And, yeah, and quite dim as well. Yeah, I mean, I got more to say about him later, hint, hint. But yeah, he's definitely a top villain. He's definitely a top villain in this show, for sure. All right, so my number 2 is Pattaya Littlefinger Baelish. Okay, he's my favorite character in the whole series, but no, he's only second in terms of villainry. So I mean, who doesn't like Microfinger here? I mean, he's great. I mean, he was the mastermind, you know, behind the War of the Five Kings, you know, and, you know, the master of political improvisation, right? I mean, he basically manipulated events just to create chaos so he can amass more power for his own selfish ends, right? And that, plus, you know, getting in bed with a 16-year-old, half Tully, half Stark, but still, you know, I mean, but that was his way of basically amassing partner because he wasn't born to wealth, and, you know, he had this chip on his shoulder all his life about not being able to marry Caitlin Tully and stuff like that. But you know, he was smart, cunning, you know, and his greatest ability was that, you know, he was surrounded by all these people in King's Landing, these people in positions of power, even Tywin Lannister, right? Olenna Tyrell, you know, Cersei's not bright, but, you know, she's definitely cunning, but nobody knew, right? Nobody knew that this guy was behind all these events, creating all this chaos, right? And basically, you know, causing the deaths of untold thousands, you know, in wars and stuff like that. And I think that was his greatest power as a villain. He was just so behind the scenes and so unassuming that, you know, everybody thought he was nothing, right? Everybody underestimated him, you know. And there's a great quote, you know, from Game of Thrones here. You know, as his men died around him, Littlefinger slid Ned's dagger from his sheath and shoved it up under his chin. His smile was apologetic. You know, I did warn you not to trust me, you know. And that's pretty much it. I mean, don't trust this guy, because if you trust this guy, you're going to end up dead, essentially. And that's what happened to a lot of the Starks. And yeah, I mean, I think he's a great villain. You know, my favorite character in Game of Thrones. And you know, his smirk was golden. What more can I say about, you know, Littlefinger that we haven't said already? Dawg?
Because he has absolutely and I think yeah, when I read a Game of Thrones, he was one of my favorite characters to read, because I mean, every time I was reading something he said, I was absolutely just bursting out into laughter, right? So one other thing, I was noticing I had one last thing to say about him, and it just kind of slipped my mind there, but yeah, the likable traits thing, right? Like when we see the joust scene and things of that nature, right? I mean, it's like it was kind of cool how he's telling us the backstory of the Mountain and the Hound and things of that nature, and but yeah, what a sly dog double, if you will. So
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about his, his really bad death, right? It was kind of like, kind of bad in the
that's
show.
what I wanted to ask you, Milt, was do you think he knew about Rhaegar and Lyanna, the truth behind behind why Robert's Rebellion actually started? Because
are you talking the show?
Yeah, because like when he's talking to Sansa in the crypt, right, and she says, he kidnapped my aunt, things of that nature, right, and he kind of gives that little look like, was that kind of a fan service to us, right? Or do you think that he knew a little bit more behind Rhaegar and Lyanna?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sansa said that. Yeah, Rhaegar was terrible. He raped my aunt Lyanna, and then Littlefinger goes, "Oh, really?" So I think that's the hint, probably, that he kind of knew what the jig was, in terms of the whole situation between Lyanna and Rhaegar, and in the show, at least, right? I think
that's
it's fan service.
I think that's what kind of bummed me out about his his departure, was because I felt like he knew something about that, and it was gonna kind of come into play, but oh well.
Yeah, and a lot of people hated the way he was portrayed. I mean, he was just so awesome in the first, at least 3 to 4 seasons in the series. Especially, he was in his element in King's Landing, doing his political maneuvering and whatnot. That people were really, really disappointed in how he was portrayed in seasons 6 and 7, especially in season 7, where it just seemed like he was just kind of like loitering around Winterfell without doing much, right? I mean, the show wasn't telling us what he was actually doing there. At the end, everybody figured out, he was trying to sow discord, but there wasn't a lot of evidence for him trying to sow discord, right? The only evidence that we got was him just, him just basically giving hints to Sansa, maybe you should get Arya out of the way, at the last episode. But there wasn't, he was just really underused when he was out of his element. I wish he would have came back to the King's Landing to do some damage over there. I mean, I could just imagine how cool it would be if Littlefinger started dealing with Euron Greyjoy, and those two started conspiring with one another, and stuff like that. So, but alas, we didn't get it. So, what do you do?
And again, here's a character that definitely made our heroes look better.
Yeah, definitely. Or made him look really stupid.
Exactly.
But it's definitely memorable and definitely smart, right? And so great. And he definitely had as much powers, as some of our heroes do in terms of raw intellect, but it was just really misdirected. So cool stuff. So we are gonna go to our number ones now. And Dawg, take it away. Right. Who's your number one?
My top is I mean, this is like so close to my favorite character on the entire show. So if there was a Darth Vader to television, right, and like the icon that Darth Vader was to Star Wars, this is the way I feel about Cersei Lannister with Game of Thrones. I think she's the Darth Vader, if you will, of television, right? So I think she's like the one of the most iconic characters in the history of television, of course, right? And I definitely say she's a villain, of course, right? I mean, just her first lines, coming out, and how she has no remorse or compassion for, the Starks around her, right? And the dead people in her crypt and things of that nature, right? And there are likable traits with her, of course, right? I mean, there's times when I like listening to her. Talk with Tyrion and some of the earlier seasons, stuff like that, where you feel like, maybe she has some compassion for her brother, right? Maybe, and I still feel that way, right? I still feel like, that there's something with Cersei that might break, and she's going to show some sort of compassion for Tyrion at some point before this is all said and done.
Yeah.
I definitely think that they're that their circle is gonna come complete at the end. So, but I also wanted to. I mean, there's definitely a reason why this character says the line Game of Thrones, right? You either, when you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die, right? So this character definitely spells it right out for us, right? She is willing to do anything to get what she wants, right? You either win or you die at this game. And again, I did mention about likable traits. I wanted to talk about this character is so great that by the time we end up hating her for the things that she's done, again, the mental torture of Sansa, Tyrion too, things of that nature, right? But by the time she kind of meets her demise with the High Sparrow, right, we're empathizing with her, right? I'm kind of feeling like I can't wait till she gets the shackles off herself, right, and can get revenge on these people, right? So, some of my favorites, my favorite Cersei stuff is, after the Great Sept blows up, right, and she's getting her revenge on Septa Unella and the Sand Snakes too, things of that nature. And Lena Headey, I think, is one of the greatest actresses we've ever seen on television, of course, too. So just the little things she can do with just the twitch of her mouth or the way she looks at somebody with absolute disdain is absolutely outstanding. The scene with even the Sand Snake's demise, right? How she's going through the banner of how she's gonna, enact revenge on Ilaria, right, and her daughter, and things of that nature, right? It's a outstanding scene. I can't think of a lot of scenes that Cersei's in, just like I said with Tyrion or with Tywin before, right? That I can't think of a scene that she's in that I don't like. Right. So she definitely makes our heroes look better as well. Tyrion, Jon Snow, even Dany. Right. That was great to see all those characters together in the Dragon Pit. So and again, likable traits here. Right. Let's look at the end of season 2, episode 9. Right. Blackwater. Right. When she's telling the story to Tommen. Right. She's about to kill her own son and because she thinks it's pretty much over for him, right? But she tells that awesome story about you being a lion and you fought like a lion today and all that stuff, right? And we're seeing Tyrion on the battlefield, and I thought that was absolute foreshadowing or not foreshadowing, if you will, but it was kind of like a Tyrion Lannister is definitely Tyrion Lannister, right? So I kind of look back at that scene of Cersei telling us that. That story to Tommen, right? And we're seeing that in the background. It's just such a beautiful moment in Game of Thrones, I think. One of my favorite scenes, of course. That's why I made sure that was on here too. And even when she's when the scene here with Septa Unella, and Septa Unella is like, it seems like Septa Unella has like that one opportunity to have one up on Cersei, where she's like, good, I'm glad to meet the gods today, blah blah blah, right? And I want to go back to Milt's point about likable traits, right? Cersei has that likable trait. She's like a mommy, right? She's like, what, today? That's not going to happen today, right? And it's just that it sounds like so caring, but it's so evil, right? She's like, you're not going to die. You're not going to die for quite a while, right? But like we spun the words into something totally different, right? Like, you're not going to have to go to, military school or something for, quite a long time. It sounds a little different, in that the way it comes out. So it's the little things like that. One of my favorite scenes too was season 7 when Tyrion and Cersei meet up again and they have their banter and just some of her facial expressions and seeing Tyrion and Cersei back together again on screen was great. And I hope we get to see them on screen again for season 8. And just making sure I didn't miss anything about. Milton, I could sit here and talk about Cersei all night, and I won't do it to you, my friend. So I'll let you say anything you'd like to say about.
Okay. I mean, great choice, Dawg. I mean, I can see why she's like the #1 villain. Definitely, she's sort of to me like a really tragic villain in a way, because I mean, I mean, she was already very prideful. You know, she had a very cruel streak, right? Basically, you know, killing her friends in a book after they visited Maggie the Frog. But you know, she was also like this. You know, she was also kind of like victim in terms of her situation, right? She was trapped in a very loveless marriage to Robert Baratheon. You know, she loved her brother in a really weird way, and you know had to keep it secret and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I think the only redeeming qualities of her, right, is what Tyrion Lannister said, right? It's basically her love for children, you know, and also her high cheekbones. And I think the love of her children in the show I'm talking about, because in the books she has no redeeming qualities, but she doesn't care about her children at all in the books. But in the show was her compassion for her kids, her love for her kids, right? I mean, she would have killed Tom instead of, you know, making him be a prisoner, you know, to the Baratheons when they, you know, try to invade King's Landing, you know. Um, you know, try to exact revenge on Dorne for mistreating, you know, if they ever mistreated Marcella, or, you know, basically, you know, try to, you know, basically told Jaime to go rescue Marcella because she was in danger in the show. But yeah. So I mean, and at the end of the day, you know, when she lost two kids, Joffrey and, you know, Marcella, she just turned psycho, right? I mean, that's when she's exacted her revenge on everybody by basically blowing up the Sept of Baelor. You know, very tragic in a way. You know, really, you know, it's portrayed really, really well. You know, would she be this evil? You know, if she was in a love, you know, where her husband did love her, we would never know, right? But definitely sure didn't help for sure. Yeah, I mean, good stuff. You know, she's a lot smarter, you know, in the show than in the books. You know, like if her intelligence level is like a 15 in D&D, you know, parlance, then maybe she'd be like a 10 in the books. So she gained like 5 intelligence points in the show, because, you know, she did a lot of crazy stuff, but a lot of stupid things. But what she did do that was common in terms of stupidity was, you know, rearming the Faith Militant, you know, and basically because that basically took her out of the action in the show and the books. So, but, you know, she had a better plan in the show about why she wanted to rearm the Faith Militant. But yeah, I mean, again, very tragic. Definitely a villain at the end of the series. I mean, like she turned main villain starting from, you know, season 6, I don't know, to probably next season she'll end up being a villain. Yeah, good choice. I mean, I just feel kind of bad for her in a way. That's all. So.
All right, that's what I think. This is like, I think this is the classic character of has likable traits. You know, I mean, even as evil as she's done some evil things, but yeah, I mean, I just, and like I said, I turned that likable into more, you know, empathize and sympathize, and you know, and but and you brought up a great point about how the show depicted, you know, like they showed how she loved her children, right?
Yeah.
More than
Oh yeah, in the books she can care less. Yeah.
And they showed a great progression of by the time Tommen's gone, she didn't care anymore. Just like Tyrion said, you know, pretty much if there's anything left in your heart, right, it's pretty much empty, right? You know, so I think at that point, that heart is there's nothing inside there, right? It's all about getting that throne and winning the game.
Yeah, but yeah, great choice. And all right, so get ready for my number one. And well, my number one is probably like the best villain and best character in the whole series, and that's none other than Stable Boy. You know, I call him you know, Needle Sponge. You know, from season 1. I mean, he only appeared in like one episode, like for 30 seconds, but he was a great villain. I mean, think about what he was trying to do. I mean, try to kidnap Arya Stark and and bring her back to Cersei. I mean, what a villain that this person is. You know, great quote. You know, Arya asked him, "What do you want?" He goes, "Want you, Wolf Girl? Come over here." You know, I think that's great. You know, I mean, that was a classic line, really, really well delivered. So good job, D&D, for writing that bit of writing there. You know, definitely, you know, worthy of an award. And this guy was played by a legend known as Hugo Culverhouse. You know, You know,
Sounds like a publishing company.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think he's gonna actually end up, he's probably gonna end up in like in the next Lord of the Rings TV series on Amazon as Aragorn or something like that, as young Aragorn, perhaps. Just kidding. I don't really know what he's gonna be. So, anyway, so that's my number one villain. But I'm just kidding. It really isn't Stable Boy, okay? Even though he's great. My number one villain is our number two villain, Dog, and that's Joffrey Baratheon, played by Jack Leeson. I mean, he's the best villain, of any TV show that I've ever seen. I think he's great. Everyone is mine to torment, right? I mean, he was just such a schmuck, as you said, that you just wanted to slap him every time he was like on screen. I mean, you actually look forward to him being on screen, so you can just kind of build up that rage and basically just slap him silly, right? I mean, everybody hated this guy. I mean, he had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. He was cruel, hateful, cowardly, but at the end of the day, he was definitely unforgettable, and you wanted to see this guy on screen because of the antics that he pulled. And and he's the only person to go through 3 swords in the show, so that's pretty cool. But at least he was good with a crossbow. So if he did have one redeeming quality, it was basically using a crossbow. I mean, regardless of whether or not the target's like tied up, on bedposts and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, even that scene in his wedding where he's like looking at that cake. I mean, you want to go ahead and punch him. I mean, look at his pose there. So it's great. I mean, I feel really bad for Jack Leeson, the actor, because I think he's like permanently typecast now as Joffrey Baratheon. I'm not. I mean, I know he doesn't want to go into acting anymore, but it's probably because he's smart enough to realize that he wouldn't get any other acting jobs that weren't like really evil villain roles because of the job he did with as Joffrey Baratheon. So yeah, I love this guy, and evidently you love this guy too as a villain. He's our number 2, and I can't say any more about this guy. I mean, he was classic villainry at its best.
Yeah. Again, I can't tell you how big of a schmuck this guy is. And I'm so glad you used that picture of the purple wedding there,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that again because that is some funny stuff, man. With when the other little people come out too, and he's just the acting going on, the way he's laughing, and that's kind of I remember him in the book just being so drunk and spitting and all the stuff that came with the words on the pages and stuff too. But he did a great job with that, just acting like I mean, how could you not hate this guy by the end of it? And then the family he's like kind of coming into before he gets poisoned, they're just absolutely repulsed by him because by the time he's kind of got Marjorie snowed in that, hey, I'm going to be a good guy to you, all this stuff like that. Oh, by the way, the guy that you were going to marry, I'm just going to, and I'm going to totally make fun of him, right? And things of that nature. And, just doesn't care about who's repulsed by him. He does not care. So,
yeah, why? Because he's king, right? And everybody's his to torment, and, but he did have one really good scene where he was actually proven right. Remember that scene? I think it was in season 3. Yeah, where he called up Tywin Lannister into the throne room, and he started asking Tywin, "Hey, I heard these rumors about this Targaryen out there in Essos, having all these dragons. Shouldn't we be worried about them?" And Tywin goes, "No, we don't have to worry about those guys. The dragons are only like size of cats." And then ultimately, I think Joffrey's gonna be proven right here. They better start worrying about those big dragons now. So I mean, he had to get the prophecy at least for that, for those 10 seconds in that one scene. So yeah, good stuff. Whatever. Joffrey Baratheon, great villain, the best villain in my list, at least, of Game of Thrones. So that's our list, guys. So we're just gonna go ahead and do a quick recap in case anybody missed our earlier picks. So we're gonna start with Dawg first, and go ahead and recap your picks.
All right, folks. My number 1 was Cersei Lannister. Number 2, I had Joffrey Baratheon. And I had number 3 at number 3. I had Tywin Lannister. I had Ramsay Bolton at number 4, folks. Number 5, I had Stannis Baratheon, and my honorable mention was Littlefinger, Peter Baelish. I wonder if he has a cousin named Big Toe.
Perhaps he does, or Macrofinger. Anyway, Well, for me, my honorable mention was Carl Fukin Tanner, the legend from Gin Alley. 5 was Euron Greyjoy. 4 was the late Walder Frey, Sr. 3 is the Night King. 2 is Petire Baelish. And numero uno is Joffrey Baratheon. And yeah, cool choices. Great choices, Dawg, in your end. And any particular villains that didn't quite make the cut? They were the Bubble Boy in this list.
I was so glad that that our lists weren't like complete matches or stuff, because the ones that I was fighting over were like Night King, Walder Frey, Night King, and Carl Fukin Tanner, baby.
Yeah.
Euron Greyjoy was slipping in my head there too. I'd like to see another season of him too, though. First, maybe the list will change by the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I was struggling with I was struggling with Qyburn actually being part of this list, because he reminds me of like Victor Frankenstein, right? That kind of character with like a really mean streak.
Right.
But he's also a maester.
What did weird with Qyburn though was that
yeah.
he joins. He's like with the Starks at first, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So it didn't kind of make sense.
Yeah.
But, then he joins with the bad guys that he was captured by, kind of, right?
Yep.
So
but Qyburn had this like mad evil scientist kind of thing with him, and I always like evil scientists, so that's cool. And also Ramsay Bolton was another person that just made the cut, but for sure memorability, to me at least, Fukin Tanner, right? The Legend of Gin Alley was awesome, for those 2 episodes, and what presence he had. So I think that's it, guys. Thanks a lot for coming out in the stream, y'all. And I guess do a little bit of shout outs here. So we had Game of Theories, Living My Rhapsody, Cardinal Doomsday, Candy Moi, Sarah with a K, Sasic, Nancy T. We got Slide the Tank Benjamin. Remember, he's going to be doing 52 pickup this Friday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Him, Brandon, and Felicia on the Citadel Trivia stream. Let's see, Peter Griffin, Bobby Catalano. Who else? The Dawg Show.
Dawg Show's here.
Yeah. Rhodes Rant. Chrissy of Ostones. I'm glad you stayed and you haven't unsubscribed to me yet. OTDA. Bubba Husky. What else?
Al was here.
Yeah, Phil H is here. Yeah, Al Red Sox fan is here. Anti Gamer. Terry T. Let's see what else. Sorry, man. I'm
Candy's mad at us because we didn't pick the mountain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was like maybe number 8 on my list. Yeah, but I mean, I kind of like the mountain's great and everything, but villainry. Let's see what else. I think that's it, guys. I can't scroll up anymore, but that's it. And the mountain was like played by 3 actors, evidently, right?
Yeah.
You were telling me that the guy that plays Robert Strong, Zombie Mountain, is actually older than the Hound or something like that, right?
Yeah, like Rory McCann or something. He's like I think he's 49.
Yeah.
And the other guy's like the strongest man in the world.
Yeah.
So I think he's younger. Just I'm assuming that though.
Yeah. So all right. So thanks a lot for coming out, guys. And Dawg, what's going on your channel? What are you going to be doing? What can these fine people see you at?
All right, folks. So you can see me on the Dawg Show on YouTube. So I'll be doing some box office news and entertainment updates throughout the week. And you can look forward to seeing the Westerosi Ninja back on the Dawg Show this Sunday at 6:30 Central, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll have another top list or some sort of action for you folks to enjoy. So thanks for having me again, Milt. And thanks for being here tonight, folks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and everybody, so you're obviously on the Westerosi Ninja channel, and but you'll see me next Saturday. I'll be doing another Clash of Crows Death Battle stream, plus Sunday night on the Dawg Show channel, we'll be doing another top 5 collaboration. Haven't decided what the theme is, but it's going to be fun, whatever it is. And
Top 5 unicorns.
yeah, it'll be about unicorns and how powerful they are. Like, who in Game of Thrones can beat a unicorn? So yeah, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks in Citadel Trivia doing a Jeopardy stream. So with that, thanks a lot, guys, for coming out, and we will talk to you all later.
Bye, folks.